If you're a parent of older children, have you ever thought about the things you wish you'd done differently? If you're a parent of younger children, do you wish somebody could tell you some things that they wish they had done differently? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, welcome back. I'm Cindy, your Sassy Southern Grandma, and I've been thinking a lot lately about my kids, and they're not kids anymore. They're all grown. Some of them have their own kids. And how I would have done some things differently when they were growing up if I knew what I know now. Don't we always think that? If I only knew then what I know now. But I'm hoping that this will spark some conversation, and also that if there are any young parents that you know, or if you yourself are a younger parent, it will help you think through some things. I, by all means, do not have all the answers. I made plenty of my own mistakes when my kids were growing up, and even if I had to go back and do it again, knowing what I know now, I'd probably still make some mistakes. But we all do the best we can with what we have to work with. So I just thought I'd share some of the things that I have thought about that in retrospect I wish I had done differently, and give you a little something to think about. And if you have some additional ideas, please put those in the comments. If you're enjoying this video and this content, please subscribe and like the video, so that helps boost our channel so you can see more of our content. Probably the biggest thing I would do differently that would impact all the other things is I raised my children largely by myself. My ex-husband left and moved to another state, and I have 5 children. I raised them largely by myself with some help from my mother and a little help from my sister. And I was primarily the caregiver, the breadwinner, the everything. The one thing that I wish that I had done differently that would probably have impacted a lot of the other things is I raised them inside of a very conservative evangelical church community. Now, not to say that they were all bad people. They're not. They got some great friends. I had some great friends at the time, but I see now, looking back, that a lot of that, the system from the top down, affected a lot of the way I raised them, the principles that I taught them, the rigidity of certainty, all of the things that come with a control religion. And while it was on the more progressive side of Southern Baptist churches, it was still very patriarchal and very controlled by, this is what we believe, you believe the same thing, don't believe anything outside this. I would have exposed them to different belief systems and let them think for themselves, help them think for themselves, to choose what it is that resonated with them. I was not given that choice myself, so that's the way I raised my children, in a stricter environment. So I would have exposed them to more belief systems, given them all the information that I could possibly find, and given them the freedom to think through what they would believe and what their belief system would be. This also involves critical thinking. I did teach them some critical thinking. I taught them a lot of things. We discussed a lot of things, a lot more than my parents did. My parents' raising was a lot of, this is the way you do it, yes ma'am, yes sir, that's what we did. We didn't really talk through a lot of things. I did do that with my kids with a lot of things, but always from the worldview of the church. Always from the worldview of, this is right, this is wrong, do this, don't do that. And I feel like I would have taught them better critical thinking had I not been keeping them and myself inside that box. I would have asked them more questions. I would have listened more. I did listen to them a lot more than my parents did. And I think we all do that. I think we all look at what our parents did right and try to emulate that, and look at what our parents didn't do so great and try to do better, which is what I tried to do. And I would ask them more questions. I would listen more. One term that I've heard a lot recently in different podcasts and different books is when someone is telling you something and they stop, say, tell me more. Let them know you want to hear more. Because a lot of times children just say, you say, how was your day at school? Fine, everything's great, everything's wonderful, or terrible, and they keep walking.
School. Fine.
Instead of allowing them to just give me short answers, say, tell me more. And then when they tell me something else, say, tell me more about that. Ask them questions. Be more open. Be more willing to listen, and which leads to giving them more time. Now, as a single mom, I worked a lot. I had sometimes 2 and 3 jobs. I got work inside their school hours as often as I could. As much as I could, I tried to work during their school hours so that I would be there in the evening. But inevitably, there are some times that I had to not be there. And my mother would fill in sometimes. And sometimes as my children got older, they were old enough and responsible enough to stay by themselves. But I wish that I had spent more concentrated time just listening and more time trying more to understand them than trying to get them to understand me. Part of that upbringing based on the church, I spanked my kids. Now, I didn't spank them past maybe 4 or 5 years old, because after that, I felt like, we can use some other kind of punishment. I didn't like spanking. I think they think I liked it, but I didn't. It was what I was taught. It was how I was raised, and it was what I was taught as a way of discipline. Now, looking back, I know that I could have done a lot of that a lot better. It's hard to take that time. It's hard to dedicate that time and that effort and that mental energy to coming up with discipline, explaining things to them, why they don't do these things or why they should do these things. And I was very intentional when I did use spanking, in that it wasn't just willy-nilly. It was for something that was serious, something that was direct disobedience, something that would harm them. But I do feel that I could have done it without the spanking. I feel like I could have done a lot better explanations, a lot better forms of discipline. A lot of that I do tend to blame on lack of time and also lack of energy. Just raising children is exhausting, times 5. So raising 1 or 2 children is exhausting, and I know that when I see young parents out, especially young mothers out in the grocery store or something, I want to help them because I know how exhausted they are. I kind of give myself a little grace with that, but I still think I could have done a lot better in the discipline area. Alternative forms of discipline. I would have taught them to question everything, especially now that knowing what I know now and knowing how the world was going to change, how our country was going to change, how much phones and social media and computers are so much a part of their lives now. Had I known all that, I would have taught them more to question everything. I personally question everything. Even if I read it, if I see it with my own eyes. When we were growing up, you could say, don't believe everything you hear and half of what you see. Now you can't even believe half of what you see. I would have taught them more to question things, to question any kind of ideas that were thrown at them, and be more critical thinking about everything. A big thing that I would not have done, I would have done differently, is I would not have gotten remarried while the kids were still in the house. For a lot of reasons. The main reason being I chose poorly. Did not think so at the time, but that'll be a whole nother video about narcissism. But at the time, I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought that this would be an addition to our family. This would be a benefit to our family in a lot of ways. But it turned out to be a detriment, and it turned out to be harmful. And harmful to me, harmful to our relationships, harmful to my relationship with my children. And I definitely, if I could erase that 7 years of my life, I would. If I could erase that relationship, I would. But you can't go back and change those things, so you have to deal with them as they come. So that's one thing, a big thing I would have changed. It would have changed a lot of things in our life had I not done that. But at the time, I thought it was the right thing to do. And another big thing that I struggled with a lot, my best friend and I talked a lot about this, was whether or not to tell our kids about things we did when we were their age. We came to the conclusion that it was not a good thing to tell them because they would think, oh, Mama did it, she turned out okay. Or Mama did this, or Mama went here, or Mama tried that, and she turned out okay, so must be okay for me to do it. That was some short-sighted thinking on our parts, and looking back now at my children and what I know of some of her children, it would have probably been a good idea. It would have been a good idea to have said, the reason I know that this is not a good idea for you is because let me tell you what happened to me. The reason I'm warning you about XYZ is because I walked through that. Let me tell you about my experience. Because I think people will take things better from you, whether it's adult to children or adult to adult. If you have experience, I'm not going to go talk to someone who has 0 children about how to raise my children. I'm not going to read an author that never was married about marriage advice. I'm not going to read an author that doesn't have any kids about this is the best way to raise your kids. I'm going to listen to somebody who's got experience. I'm especially going to listen to somebody who's going to say, I did a lot of things wrong, but here's what I would do differently. So I think that if I had given my kids more of my life experience instead of saying, believe me, I know, especially with my girls as they got older and they were dating, and I would say things, I think they took the things I said about their boyfriends as, that's a bad person, leave him alone, when in reality I was trying to protect them, and I was trying to explain to them that I knew that I can see this kind of person coming from a mile away. If I had it to do over again, I would have given them a lot more of my life experiences verbatim. Things that I actually did, things that I tried, things that didn't work, things that did work. And explain to them that that's where wisdom comes from, is from experience. I can't prevent any of their mistakes. I can't prevent all their mistakes. But I could have at least given them more value in my experiences instead of just saying no and don't and stay away. I could have just told them what my experience was, and hopefully they would have taken that as, okay, Mama knows what she's talking about. Because teenagers don't think we know anything, and that is just a rough period for everybody mostly, and I just wish I had done those things differently, especially during the teen years. If you have some experiences that you would like to share in raising children, if you're a young parent with young children and you have any questions, please, by all means, go in the comment section and share those questions. We've got plenty of people here that could give you some answers from different points of view. If you have grown children and grandchildren, what would you have done differently? Let me know in the comments, and we'll see you next week.
Welcome back now. Here.